Welcome back to another episode of the Illuminated Path podcast. And today we're talking all about hormone health, fertility, postpartum, and so much more. I'm really excited to welcome Stefanie Adler to the podcast. She's a certified nutrition consultant, a functional diagnostic nutritionist, and a women's hormone and fertility expert. I was recently on her podcast, The Wisdom of the Womb, and she has been featured in publications like the New York Post for her science-backed nutrition advice. As a passionate advocate for women's health and wellness, what I love about Stefanie, and she is not afraid to say it herself, is that she is not afraid to go against the grain and challenge mainstream beliefs about what's possible for her clients. Her mission is simple and so powerful, which is to inspire women to work with their bodies to unlock their innate wisdom, heal naturally, and break away from limiting narratives of conventional medicine. So we're going to get into all different topics today related to hormone health, women's health. We're going to talk about motherhood, postpartum, and so much more. Can't wait to share this conversation with you. Let's dive into today's episode. Welcome to the Illuminated Path podcast. I'm your host, Liv, founder of Eno Wellness Collective. My wellness journey started with yoga, which led me down the path of exploring healing modalities like meditation, breath work, sound healing, mindset work, and so much more. This exploration inspired my mission to help others find what lights them up. Get comfortable and curious as we learn from experts, teachers, and creators who are lighting up their communities and living an inspired, expansive life. Let's dive in. Welcome back to another episode of the Illuminated Path podcast. Super excited for our guest today. Welcome to the podcast, Stefanie.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
I'm excited to get into our conversation today. So I know we connected, a bit ago when I was on your podcast, and I've been really excited to switch roles and I had so many questions back for you, but I wanted to save it for our conversation today. So, one of the things I wanted to kick us off with, which is part of the reason why I even started this podcast, was to hear people's stories and to also hear like what led them here. What was the path that got you here? And I know that your story is really rooted in how you began to heal your own hormonal issues and what you were experiencing earlier in your life. So I would love for us to kick off with just hearing a little bit about what led you to this working with women to support them. So yeah, I would love to hear where it started for you.
Totally. It's super interesting because it really goes so far back for me. Like my parents say that I had digestive issues from coming out of the womb, and like I just remember so much of my childhood having a stomach ache. And we actually, went down the whole conventional medicine path. The time was for me as a kid, and I spent a couple years in and out of a GI, gastrointestinal doctor's office and doing, everything from colonoscopies, endoscopies, trying different medications, et cetera. And they pretty much just left me with a, kind of general diagnosis of you have IBS, take these medicines. It made everything worse. I didn't want to do that. I actually learned as an adult that my mom only told me this a few years ago, that the doctor said to her that she thought I was making it up for attention and that she had real kids to treat and like to leave her alone, like get out of her office. And, it's just really interesting to be on the other side of that now. And, I always trust that the women that I'm working with are the experts of their own bodies. And, but I wasn't willing, even as like a 12-year-old, to settle for the fact that I just have to accept this and deal with stomach aches and painful poops and all of these things, for the rest of my life. Like it just didn't make sense to me. And so at the age of 12/13, I really took ownership over my diet and I went off of gluten, which at the time in the American South was not really a thing. And really I turned to the Food Network to like learn how to cook for myself more. And I was like cooking for me and my family because it really was important to me. And it's symptoms I'd been having for 13 years went away within a few months of changing my diet. And so I became really aware from a young age, the way that food can be a catalyst for dis-ease in the body or can be our medicine. And so that's really where my journey started with this. We can fast forward, 10 years after that. My mom told me I should go to school to be a nutritionist. And as a 17, 18-year-old, I was like, shut up, Mom, you know nothing about me. Now I think about my son saying something like that to me and my heart is just like, ah! But of course, my mom was right. And I figured it out when I did a first degree in something else living abroad. But I came back and I was just shocked by how every other commercial on TV was for a pharmaceutical medication or for junk food. And no one was putting it together. And so I went back to school, got a degree in holistic nutrition. And through that process, started learning more just about like medications. Like I had been on birth control for a long time. When I came off of that, I was totally rocked. Wanted to learn everything that I could about the female hormone cycle, fertility, knew I always wanted to be a mom, wanted to help other women actualize that. And then decided in school to specialize really in everything from preconception nutrition all the way through baby's first foods. And yeah, that's kind of the long of the short of how I got to where I am today.
And being 12, 13, when this was all happening at the beginning, that's young. I'm thinking back, like when you're talking about having that awareness of like, I don't know, I think something is actually, happening in my body, and I'm going to take control over it and start to explore foods. Like that is a very young age for all of that to be happening. A very mature thing to do versus a lot of people, right? And I'm sure you come into contact with clients. It's like not even having that awareness and that like questioning until later on in adulthood. So it sounds like food was the gateway for you. Food was the gateway to like, okay, I'm going to then go down this huge path. So do you remember when you first were starting to feel better, and you were saying after within a couple months you started to already notice the changes? Do you notice or do you remember what were some of the big like food shifts that you started to make? I know you said you were cooking, but like how did you use food to kind of heal yourself?
Yeah. I mean, also what I was doing then is not what I would do now. So just putting that out there, like I've come a long way since my 12-year-old self and the knowledge that was like 20 years ago, and so like what was there. But I do remember, and some of it I don't remember that much of, honestly, like you said, I was pretty young. And I think it's like, I was always kind of a bit of a weirdo and like an old soul that like really grew into myself as I got older. So I was like definitely happiest in that element. But I actually had like with our family's camcorder, I had my sister record what was my cooking show called Staying Fit with Stefanie. And I would like remake your family's favorite meals healthier. And like, I'm remembering like I would do like banana breads where we're using yogurt instead of, fill in the blank. I don't remember, or like we're using, they were making them flourless, things like that. A lot of it was really for me at that time in my life was really removing a lot of the processed foods. And that was because I was staying away from gluten. So like at the time, there weren't so many gluten-free packaged goods. Like there was this tiny little section at Whole Foods and the crackers tasted like actual cardboard. Like, so I just needed to learn how to not have anything that was coming out of out of packages. And I grew up in a home where like you open those cabinets and it was, I mean, my mom cooked what she would consider healthy meals, in the evenings, like always a starch, a vegetable, and a protein, and a salad on the side. But, we had Oreos, Pop-Tarts, fruit by the foot, whatever, you name it in there. And because I couldn't eat a lot of that stuff anymore, I think that was a big part of it. It was like cutting out a bunch of the processed stuff, but the gateway was really gluten for me.
Definitely. And when I think about even my own food journey, I think everyone has different layers of like knowledge. The more knowledge that you have, the more you start to dive into documentaries and books and just kind of go down that rabbit hole of the food industry. Like it just like so many shifts and so many changes start to happen, but everyone comes into that at different times in their life, and some maybe never will. So when you think about for you, kind of a big aha moment about food and food industry, and how processed food, even like outside of your own journey, was there something that you read, saw, like found out that you were like, whoa, I kind of pull back the curtain for this?
It's a weird thing. I'm going to say not really. And I think it's just because maybe it did start so young for me that like I just kind of always operated. And again, like I've made a lot of changes since then too. Like the way that I eat now is still not the way I was eating when I was 21. I guess like the big, which was even 9 years after that originally started. But I think that the biggest thing for me is, I guess to answer that question, was around like when I decided to go back to school for nutrition, I had to make the decision. Am I going to go to school to become a registered dietitian, or am I going to go the holistic nutrition route? And I actively made the choice to not go the registered dietitian route because I didn't want to have to spend 3 years learning something I was going to need to spend 3 years unlearning. Like I knew at that time that the food recommendations that I would be learning in registered dietitian school were coming from the government and that they were all, I don't know if I can curse on here, but BS, you know? And so I I think that that, like, was a part of that, like, real awakening for me because before that, like, I would say in like, even leading up to, like, the 2 years before that, I remember I would, like, cook my dad these, like when I was living at home, in high school, like, special lunches for the week. So he would eat healthier, at lunch. Like, I was really into that. And, like, in hindsight, all of that, like, nutrition data that I had pretty much until I decided, like, the year before I decided to go back to school was really rooted in, like, cholesterol is bad for you. I was kind of like a pescatarian because I was afraid of eating meat. And then there was this really awakening of like, oh my God, this is like not right. And like special K should not be recommended for breakfast. And so when I went to school for holistic nutrition and really learned a different way, that was kind of that like wake up moment for me, I guess. Yeah.
Mhm. Beautiful. And I know that everything that you do also centers around this root approach, right? Getting to the root, getting to like what is actually happening, which I am sure is, for your own journey that's been, constantly discovering really getting to like what else is here versus maybe what a doctor might tell you like is here. And so I would love to know, yeah, why that I obviously know why that's your focus, but I would love to know like what you notice about like that root cause approach with your clients and then also with yourself. Like, how has that been I guess, a guiding um, focus for you?
Yeah. It's a great question. Basically, the thing it's hard because I feel like so much of the way that we've been conditioned as a culture and I'm speaking primarily about Western culture here, but not exclusively. I mean, the world is not far behind in terms of, adopting this similar mindset. And actually, I have friends who've lived in certain parts of Asia where they're like even more on the like medical bandwagon train. But we've been so trained to think about what I call a pill for an ill. Like you have a headache, take some Tylenol. You have this, da 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 da. You have PCOS, take birth control. You can't get pregnant, let's do Clomid and IVF. And what it has done is it's completely silenced what our bodies are screaming to us to listen to, which is like, hey, I'm talking to you. Like, listen to me. Our bodies are constantly in communication with us. And I believe not that there isn't a time and a place for medication. It's not about that, but that we're not listening. We're not saying, oh, when I have a headache, is that telling me that I'm dehydrated or that maybe my detox pathways need a little bit more support? Or is that a function of blah, blah, blah? Like, we're not asking these questions. And even I think part of what is actually like so transformative about it, I feel like you asked it in a really unique way for me to have to answer this question of like why it's been so powerful. Because at the end of the day, like, yeah, it's about not having to take medication and it's not actually about not having to take medication or about like not having being able to opt out of that system and like just feel good in my body, but it's actually like being in connection with my body and like being in truly understanding and like us being in partnership and giving each other what we need. And then what becomes possible in my life as a result of that, right? Instead of walking around kind of like this disconnected brain body zombie, being like, I don't really know what's going on. I'm relying on external sources and experts to like give me information and like kind of fix me and band-aid me up until I need the next thing fixed. You are the sovereign of your body and the health, your journey. And like that ownership and confidence is, I think, what's actually so powerful. And I think specifically for my clients who become moms, it gives them the power to be that person for their baby, for their child. And when you are no longer relying on external sources to tell you what is right for your kiddo, like, wow, the mama bear like power that comes behind that, I feel like builds a lot of confidence.
Mm, definitely. I think one of the times that I felt the most connected to my body was when I got off birth control after being on birth control for years and years and years of like, oh, this is what it feels like to have this to go through your cycle, right? And to kind of have that reconnection to your body. It's a huge, huge piece of the puzzle. And so I wanted to know, with the clients that you work with, what you notice, when you do get to the root cause. Like, are there a couple of different things that you're noticing are like constantly coming up? You're like that people that you're finding as a root of what's causing hormonal issues with people.
Yeah, absolutely. And, to some extent, we could play this game of like the root of the root of the root, like if I say, yes, like, mineral imbalances and yes, like gut infections, also like beneath that is stress and like this over scheduled, constant stimulated lifestyle that we have and poor diet and all of those things. So I'll like kind of walk us through and we won't continuously dig and dig and dig. But I would say like that the primary causes, it kind of depends on what I'm working with people for, of hormone issues. One, mineral balance or mineral imbalances, really. So, some of this is supplement induced. Like so many people just take athletic greens or like whatever green powder and like love using this prenatal or women's multivitamin. And I can't even tell you, Liv, oh my God, how many people their like multivitamin or prenatal is making everything worse. And so, a lot of it is like supplements people using, a lot of it is poor diet and also really straying from ancestral ways of eating. And I don't necessarily mean paleo, but more like traditional ways of eating. Like, what were your great, great, great grandparents like eating? Like, nose to tail eating, making stocks, liver, access to foods that are just really rich in vitamin A and K, which causes us to not be able, if we're not having those, causes us to not be able to move minerals properly. And so then I'll see a lot of copper excess, iron, things like that. So I would say the first one is definitely those mineral imbalances. And those are caused by just like modern diet, modern lifestyle, being super stressed, and also sometimes supplements. And then the other one is gut dysfunction. I mean, do you remember that whole like trend? I don't remember if it was 2 years ago or 1 year ago. Time kind of warps when you have a little kid, but there was that whole like hot girls have IBS thing, like going around. I don't know if this was just in my world, but on Instagram, it was this whole like hot girls have stomach ache, hot girls with IBS. Like whatever about them being hot or not, but like, it was like normalizing that like everyone has all these gut issues and IBS. And so a lot of gut issues, a lot of dysbiosis, which means an imbalance of good and bad bacteria in the gut. Some of this, I also, in a lot of like candida overgrowth, and some of this goes back to birth control. Birth control, one, actually also causes mineral deficiencies and vitamin deficiencies. So go back to that mineral imbalance, but it also can cause a lot of gut issues, more the oral contraceptive than like other forms of hormonal birth control because you're swallowing it. But that's a really big one. I always say pooping problems become period problems. So if you've got stuff going on in your gut, it's going to show up in your hormones. And then the third is toxins and exposure to toxins. And so either clogged drainage systems and detox systems, or, I'll see this a lot with fertility. Like a lot of women are having more and more miscarriages nowadays. And I have a little bit of an interesting theory that I haven't obviously been able to prove because I don't have a research team behind me, but maybe one day soon. A lot of people I think talk about with fertility that, it's that women are waiting longer to have babies. And so it's their age. But if we go back in, the data, yeah, women were having babies earlier because they got married earlier, but also women were having a lot more kids and we're still having kids in their late 30s and early 40s. Like it's not actually an age thing. My hypothesis is that it's an exposure to toxins thing. Like we are all exposed to so many toxins on a day-to-day basis. A 22-year-old has a certain amount of exposure to toxins compared to a 35-year-old who has, 13 more years, like literally double the amount, 50% more of her lifespan exposure to those toxins. And the body uses pregnancy as a detox method. It like sees it as an opportunity to clean house. So I would say like exposure to environmental toxins, some that like we have control over, like in our, homes and body care products, and also some that are less in our control in terms of, in our environment. When you walk outside your door, seem to be really impacting hormone imbalances.
So much. I know. I'm getting into the toxins and like things that are in your home and in your makeup and your, body wash and shampoo. Like you can start to really see just how much it shows up in all of our lives. Like you said, some are in our control, some outside of our control. But Super interesting. I definitely hear you on the gut health piece, and I, personally know a lot of people and have a lot of people that in my circles in my community that have gut health struggles, and like has become more top of mind for them over the past years. And I do think that food typically is like a big gateway for people to start to notice, like, oh, okay, what I'm putting into my body, it can heal it, right? Or it can reverse things, or it can just make me feel a different way. So such important work that you're doing. And I know that your journey becoming a mom has been a big piece of now, also even the evolution of what you do. And I'm sure that when you became a mom and like got pregnant, went through pregnancy, went into postpartum, that especially in the work that you do, you're taking like a super conscious approach to it, right? Of like, okay, I get to experience this. And like, I know when I became pregnant, I was like, okay, I need to figure everything out. Like as a health coach, a yoga teacher, I really immersed myself in being pregnant and into postpartum too. So I would love to know what your journey was like, through pregnancy, preconception into postpartum, and how you use what you do in your own personal like navigating of the journey.
Yeah. Well, I kind of got a chuckle when you were saying that because I had this idea that because of all the things that I do, I would have like the most amazing pregnancy ever, you know? And I struggled with really severe nausea for 20 weeks. And then that led me to do a lot of research about nausea and why that happens in pregnancy, because I was so convinced that I was just going to feel awesome because I ate the way that I did. And I continued to eat the way. I mean, that is one thing I will say I'm grateful for, like having these habits before getting pregnant. I didn't have any sort of like digression. I just was nauseous all the time and threw up all the time, but I wasn't like only eating saltines or anything like that. Like I really maintained my commitment to my food goals. I was still eating liver. I was still, making sure that I was getting all the nutrients that I needed to support myself and baby. Sometimes I threw them up. But so that led me down a path of like doing a lot of research about that, which it's mostly genetic, which is actually kind of a weird thing. But yeah, I mean, I think that the ways that it supported me the most in pregnancy was just feeling really confident in my body and my body's ability to do what it was supposed to do. Even feeling really nauseous for 20 plus weeks and throwing up a bunch. I loved being pregnant. Like I felt it was like such a beautiful spiritual experience, and I felt super connected to my baby. And I had a home birth and it went really well, and I trusted myself, to give birth to my baby at home in a really empowered way. I felt really set up for success with postpartum food. I had stocked my freezer with super nourishing foods that I was preparing for weeks. And then we prioritized getting like someone to come help with meal prep once we ran out of that food, to make sure that I was getting the really nourishing foods. And so, I mean, I think that was the biggest piece about it, was like maintaining food habits throughout, because I think a lot of people get so overwhelmed with postpartum, and it's like, I don't have time to think about this. I don't have time to cook. Like so many people, order in a bunch. Like it's probably like the worst thing you could be doing, and when it comes to postpartum, just 'cause you're getting exposure to all those phthalates, and like the food isn't organic and it's cooked, like getting high quality food is so important, beyond anything else. Like it's just the most important thing you can do for yourself and for baby. And I have, a preconception, pregnancy, and nursing mother's diet that I recommend to my clients and that I follow, including 3 to 4 ounces of liver a week, getting 20,000 IUs of vitamin A from cod liver oil daily, making sure that I'm getting adequate vitamin K from raw butter, raw cheese, or raw milk, making sure that I'm getting meat stock daily, vegetables, all grains properly prepared, things like that. Like really focusing on ancestral, all ancestral cultures had what they considered sacred foods for preconception, pregnancy, nursing, and young children. And they went to great efforts and great length to secure them. And I think about that now, where like everyone just wants everything to be convenient. And it's like, this is not the time in your life, despite all the like challenges of it, to focus on convenience. It is the time to focus on density in terms of nutrient density and quality. So that was, I think, the biggest thing. And then also, I was running hair mineral analysis tests on myself throughout pregnancy and postpartum. I actually 19 months, still breastfeeding, still consider myself very much postpartum. Just put one in the mail last week. Running hair mineral analysis tests on myself have allowed me to really customize my mineral needs. And I think have allowed me to feel never super tired or sleep deprived during postpartum. And my baby's never slept through the night. I mean, he's up like every 2 hours always, to, be able to still nurse, to really just feel good in my body during this incredibly challenging time, and, getting ready for, God willing, in the next, I am an advocate of waiting 2 years between pregnancies at minimum to help your body rebuild. But, I'm working towards making sure that my body's ready to do it all over again, because it's a hard job.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm like, I need that whenever the diet that you were talking about, like through each stage. And because I also, actually next week, I found someone here locally that can do the hair mineral test, and which I hadn't found here on Guam, so I found someone recently, so I'm going to be doing one of those as well. I just feel like it's super empowering to be able to know and get information and get insights, into what's happening with your body and your health, and especially during these like really crucial times, preconception, pregnancy, and postpartum. And the food piece, I was like, that's something that I would love to do in a future postpartum phase. Is I had grand plans for stocking my freezer with postpartum food. Right before my baby was born, there was a huge super typhoon here on Guam. So there was like no power, no like water. There was it was not great conditions for cooking or storing anything. But I know that that's a huge piece of what I want to do in the future postpartum. For you, when you think about, because it sounds like you did really set yourself up for success, and not even set yourself up for success because you have that background in, obviously in nutrition, but also just prioritization of like, this is going to be the thing I focus on because it has the ripple effect in all areas. So when you were thinking about what you were going to be putting in your freezer, right? And even for breastfeeding, like what you wanted to make sure that you had, like the nutrients that you were planning to have. I know you mentioned a few, but if you were to say, let's say like the top 3 things that people should consider postpartum in their nutrition, what are those 3 like top things? Like if you don't get anything else, but you get these 3, what would you say they are?
Yeah. The first one would be meat stock, and that is different than bone broth. And I think, just like to clarify for people, bone broth is amazing. It's super mineral rich, but when we're using meat stock, we're getting so much more of that collagen. And if you think about just like healing tissues and just like bringing your body back to, like, there's so much happening. Think about how big you are, and then like your belly just like goes away. It's like, oh, okay. But there's so much healing. You also have a wound the size of a dinner plate on the inside of your body that needs to heal. Like, we need to bring in that really healing collagen rich broth. And so meat stock. So when I was thinking about freezing, we were doing a lot of soups, curries, chilies, things like that, all of which had meat stock at the base. So meat stock is number 1. The second one would be animal fats in general. When you are breastfeeding, I feel like a lot of people, it's an interesting thing when you get into like the Instagram world of breastfeeding, and people talk about, like, what are the foods to like give yourself more, like milk. I feel like a lot of people get it wrong. Like, we really need to be having more animal fats. And so cooking with things and a meat stock does that a little bit because it already has, animal fat, but like we were definitely like, it was not a time for like boneless, skinless chicken breast. I mean, there's never a time for boneless, skinless chicken breast, in my opinion, but like, it was really not the time for that. Like, we were doing like everything with the skin and making sure we were doing plenty of dark meat and like fatty pieces of meat. Like, animal fat, super, super important for fueling everything from breast milk production to like brain health. I mean, healthy fats and animal fats are so important for brains, and like thinking about postpartum depression and anxiety, really wanting to set more moms up for success with that. And that was something I was thinking about with myself. So the second one was animal fats and making sure I was getting adequate protein, but not lean protein, always with the fat. And then the third one is some amount of healthy carbohydrate. And so, when we're thinking about breastfeeding, you're burning so many more calories. I would like wake up in the middle of the night being like, oh my God, I'm so hungry. You have to give me some food right now. And so something that I actually did was I made like breastfeeding, snacks that were easy. Like, I made a bunch of these like banana breads that I let eat, like these little, and like banana bread muffins, basically. They're like mini versions of it. And so my husband was able to take those out of the freezer, stick one in the toaster oven, lather it up with a ton of ghee, and bring it to me while I was nursing. And those were my breastfeeding snacks. I made enough for like probably like 3 weeks. they weren't filled with a bunch of oats and like with a bunch of, the things that people think, but, just having like the banana itself, honey, which is like an amazing source of carbohydrate, but still comes with all those enzymes and everything. Really a great way to like stabilize some of those hunger feelings and also support all of the need for extra calories and for extra energy. Always making sure though that it was coming with adequate fat, like ghee all over it.
Yeah, I'm like writing this down. Because I have for myself also. I have a lot of friends that are pregnant right now, family members that are pregnant. I'm going to say, go get yourself some meat stock, animal fats, and healthy carbs. I love the banana bread with ghee combo idea as well. Just out of curiosity, because I know you probably see this a lot with clients, but for clients or people that you work with, or even people that you know that are like on a plant-based diet or vegan or primarily vegetarian, what would you say to that, right? With animal, fats and meat being a suggestion.
Yeah. So I actually have a like hard line in my practice. If you're not willing to introduce any sort of animal products, I can't work with you. And that's because like it goes against my value system. I deeply believe it is not healthy for you. I deeply believe it is not healthy for your children. We know studies of like people who were completely plant-based during pregnancy have much higher rates of things like hypospadia. Like there's so much research there, and I don't want to like demonize anyone's choices, but I've worked with so many former vegetarians and vegans, all of whom it's come at a great expense to their health, but you usually don't realize that until 10 years too late. Like it takes so much time for those mineral deficiencies and those the ways that it impacts gut flora to show up, that for a lot of people don't even put the two and two together. But I mean, I've had amazing success with people who come back to my practice and who are willing to introduce some animal food. So I don't need people to be like eating steak 3 times a day, but you have to be willing to introduce, some animal fats, meat stock, or, even eggs, dairy, things like that. So I don't deal with it that often anymore because I used to deal with it enough and we weren't getting the results we wanted to get. And I was seeing on the opposite side, people coming in being like, I need to not be a vegetarian anymore. I had a joke, my group program called the Well Woman Collective. We used to joke that it was like the place where vegetarians came to get happy because there were always so many vegetarians in that program, like who would come into the program and not be vegetarians by the time they left. They left. Leave is not a word. By the time they left. And so I have a lot of experience helping people reintroduce animal products, but I don't support it as a viable option.
I'm glad I asked the question. I was curious. I was like, well, how do you, that's, no, makes, totally makes sense.
Yeah.
So I would love to know obviously you were doing a lot of the practical, let's prep, let's get the food, let's, prepare for postpartum in terms of the things that you can do. But obviously, both of us know that postpartum is a ride, like from a mindset, mentality perspective, even from a business perspective of like, having your business, having your program, having your clients. How did you create space for yourself for, whatever type of space and time you took off? And what did you notice just about your mental health, mentality, just mindset going into postpartum?
Yeah. I mean, I think there were a few things that really supported me in having a strong mindset going into postpartum. The first one was I know what I signed up for. I think that like is a really important thing, like for women to really prepare themselves for what biologically normal infant behavior is. Like it is normal for your infant to want to be held constantly. And you should know that. If you go into this being like, oh, I'm just going to put my baby in the stroller, or like put them down on the Dakota and like do whatever for this many hours a day. And that's not your, reality, because that's not biologically normal infant behavior for the most part, then you're going to feel really frustrated when you don't have any time for yourself. Right. And so I spent a lot of time getting really educated about what biologically normal infant behavior was, and loved the Nurture Revolution, which is a book by Greer Kirschenbaum that was like a really great resource. And then, just other, books, podcasts, things like that to really prepare myself for infant sleep. And so, and then, one of my birth mantras that I like actually used the most during birth really supported me during postpartum too, which was, I choose this, I want this. Like, recognizing that these are I signed up for this. Like actively choosing this. I actively want this. This is not something that I just like fell into on a whim. Like I signed up for this job. And I think that that really created a lot of resilience for me when it came to, the hard moments and times when it comes to having an infant. And, I think it's unusual only because I've heard from other people that it's unusual, but like I can count the amount of times on one hand that I felt like touched out in motherhood. And I had a koala baby. Like he is still so deeply attached to me always. And I think that it's not that I don't like spending time alone or that I don't want to like have a bath to myself and all that, but it's that I mentally was like, this is that season of life for me and I will have that again. I will have that space. So it's been really powerful to just like have those mantras and have that like education of like what is normal and preparing myself for it. And when it came to work, I don't know. I feel like I did a good job. Like I really wanted to prioritize the first 40 days and I did. I stayed in bed with my baby for the most part for 40 days. And so I took 40 days off of like all work and then I came back to doing just my group program for a little while. And then, slowly started integrating my private practice again. I think I would probably do things a little bit differently going into a next pregnancy. So I don't know if I have like the perfect answer for you with that, but I think around just making space was allowing myself to be really gentle with myself when there wasn't the space, right? Like, and just being like, if this isn't always going to happen, that I'm going to have space for me, that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you're like, I signed up for this. I chose this, and being able to like lean into the everything is temporary, but also like the season. This is the season, right? Of having young kids and young children and infants. And I think when we talked last that our kids are around the same age. And so, yeah, I feel like when I think of what I thought postpartum was going to be compared to what it actually was, I feel like I learned so much about what I would have done differently, or how I would approach it differently going into another postpartum experience. And for me, the big theme is just, I think I would try to create more space after versus having any big creative projects. Like for me, I host an annual event and an annual wellness festival here, and for some reason, I decided that it would make sense to do that 8 weeks after giving birth. Like that would be the time that it would take place. And so when I look back, I was like, why did I do that? Or why did I not think like, oh, like, give a couple more months? And so I think I would definitely set my systems and support and team up so that I can really be in mother mode, and be in those early nurturing mode for a longer period of time. So all lessons, everyone goes through it and they're like, they think, okay, 2 months, I'll feel fine. And yeah, it's such a big shift. So when you work, I know you work right now with, you said preconception, pregnancy, postpartum, and other people as well. But when you think about your next chapter and where you want to go next with your work, obviously motherhood has been a huge inspiration and in the direction. But I would love to know a little bit about what you see as like the next part of your path.
Yeah. So I'm actually really excited about doing more education around conscious parenting, and not necessarily from the place of like, don't yell at your kids, though I think that's great. I mean, I don't yell at my child, but more from like the place of conscious nutrition for, children, and like, how do we set them, like our children up for success? It's amazing to me, like the way I see people feed their kids. I don't know if it's the case too in Guam, but like at the pool this summer, I was just like ill from seeing what people were feeding their children. And we have an epidemic of childhood chronic illness in the United States. 51% of children today have chronic health issues. Like it's not acceptable. And so really doing a lot of educating around conscious nutrition, but also like, how do we support children's mental health through things like co-sleeping, helping more women feel empowered to birth in a way that sets them and their children up for more health success. I'm actually creating a program right now called Generational Wellness. It's going to start with just nutrition and like immune support for children, and so to give parents the tools of like, well, what actually should you be feeding your children, like what is ancestrally normal, traditionally normal, because I think a lot of that knowledge is lost. But I'm hoping to expand it like over time and have it be a more robust curriculum to include everything from sleep support, birth, all of the things that I think kind of flow into it together. So I do see like an evolution happening when it comes to just more around the things that I spend a lot of my time practicing now, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds like, I was like, sign me up for whenever that program is. It sounds amazing. And yes, like I noticed that too when I first started, Sky feeding Sky like his first foods. I was like, whoa, there's a whole thing to like learn here, and
Yeah.
noticing all the kids, or the food available for kids, and all the snacks, all that. It's like, it's wild to see. I'm like, wait, is this are you like, how is this possible that all of these foods for babies and toddlers are like just all the processed sugar and everything? It's wild to see. So yeah, I love that, the conscious parenting evolution. I know I also saw on your website that you went through a doula, or like you studied to be a doula, so I can see how it all like blends and
Yeah.
fuses together. So yeah, if there's anything that you have coming up, I'll definitely drop it into the show notes so people can find. I know a lot of people would be interested, especially in this community that people have come through the wellness world, and now have seen me have the motherhood transition. And so I know a lot of mamas or mamas to be, or people that support mamas, are listening to the podcast. So we'll definitely share it. So I wanted to close our conversation up with hearing a little bit about, a few practical things that you would recommend at a high level. If people are like, I'm listening to this, I want to start paying attention to my health and nutrition a little bit more. Not necessarily even, pregnancy related, but just in general. They're listening and they're like, what can I start to do today? Something simple, actionable, practical. What would be a few things that you would recommend people start with if they're looking to have that deeper awareness to their holistic nutrition?
Okay. Well, considering I already said two on one side, I'm just going to say both of them really quick so that people aren't like, well, what's that? So we already talked about meat stock. Meat stock is so nourishing and so good for everyone. It's the one recommendation I give every single client, no matter where like it's one of those things where it's like everything is super customized and everyone gets a meat stock recommendation because everyone could benefit from it. So if you're like, well, how do I make meat stock? It's so easy. You can do it with chicken or beef, but I'm going to give you a chicken recipe because it's easy. You take a full chicken. For every pound of meat, you add 4 cups of water. So if you have a 3-pound chicken, that's going to be 12 cups of water, filtered water, ideally. You're going to add some salt. You can add any flavorings you want, like, fresh thyme or fresh rosemary. You don't have to. You could also just leave it plain. You could add in a few vegetables if you want, or you could just leave it plain, and you boil and then simmer it until the meat is fall off the bone. It's usually like 2 hours for chicken. If you do it with beef, you could do like oxtail or beef neck or, whatever, any sort of meat that's still on the bone, but it's like gelatinous in nature. So everyone would benefit from that. Drink, a cup of it in the morning, a cup of it in the evening, have 5 cups a day. It doesn't matter. Just get that in your body. And then the other one that's a little bit for, if there are people listening who didn't hang up when I said I don't work with vegetarians or vegans, if you're not a meat stock person, adrenal cocktails. Most of us are super deficient in sodium and potassium, especially moms. I have never seen a postpartum HTMA come back where someone is not deficient in sodium and potassium. So start increasing your salt, Celtic sea salt, Redmond's real salt, like healthy salts, no table, salt, no more table salt, throw it away. Terrible for you. Good salt. Increase your salt, and then you can make adrenal cocktails, which have, vitamin C, which are so good for the adrenals and helps the support of sodium and potassium. And then coconut water is great with potassium. And then you add, sea salt to that. And so make adrenal cocktails / get more sodium and potassium and make meat stock. And then I would say, like, on a bigger level is personify your body. It's a bit of a strange practice if you're not used to it, but like sit down and have a conversation with your body like she was your friend, right? And some people, who are coming from like eating disorder backgrounds or just like more self-love have a little bit of practice with this, but sometimes it feels really foreign if you've never done it before. But like if you personified your body and you took the signals that she is sending you as language, how would you then start to be able to have that conversation? And so when you're feeling like cramps around your period, or you're feeling constipated, or you're feeling fill in the blank, you're getting acne, whatever, really sit and say like, okay, body, I'm here. I'm ready to listen. I'm asking you, what do you need from me? What are you trying to tell me? and tap into that. And the more you do it, the more you'll actually start to see that your body is giving you feedback. And if you can listen and then respond in kind, you'll start working with your body more. So the first step is just start opening up those, levels of communication to build that trust with your body.
Such a beautiful reminder. I don't know about you all that are listening, but I have like a full notebook of notes from this conversation. I was like writing down all sorts of things. So I so appreciate the time. I'm so glad you got to share your wisdom with this community. And, I know people will be super interested in this work. So I'll definitely drop all of your details in the show notes to explore. Where can people find you if they want to connect with you? What do you have coming up in 2025 for people to plug into?
Yeah, well, I would be, so honored if you guys come follow me on Instagram and like actually send me a message and tell me what resonated with you about this conversation. Like I answer all of my own messages. It means so much to me when people are like, oh my God, I was listening to Livia's podcast and you said to do this and I did it and blah, 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 blah. Like it makes me so happy. So I really invite everyone to come send me a message on Instagram. It's Stefanie Adler Wellness. Stefanie is with an F. And then coming up this year, we've got some really fun things. I do one-off hair mineral analysis tests, just like you're getting done, Livia, there in Guam. If anyone is like, oh my God, I just want to know what my mineral status is and how to support it better. I do group coaching, like the Well Women Collective, private coaching, if you're looking to really optimize the experience in your body and identify hidden blocks to wellness for you. I'm your girl. But yeah, just come and say hi. I really love connecting with other women in this space. And it's so special to be able to put faces and names to this community that we're building around empowered motherhood and or just like empowered womanhood. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much for the time. And we'll talk soon. I hope to stay in your world and vice versa. And so thanks for the time today.
Thank you so much, Livia. I loved being here with you.
Thanks for listening. If you like this episode, please rate and review, and don't forget to subscribe. Learn more at enowellnesscollective.com and connect with us on Instagram at enowellnesscollective.